The Ferrari died at 4:47 inches the afternoon, on a stretch of Route 2 that nobody uses anymore. Elena Hartwell had taken the old road on purpose. She always did, when she needed to think. The freeway was faster, but the freeway was noise, 18-wheelers and brake lights, and the particular kind of anxiety that came from moving fast without going anywhere. Route 2 inches November was different. The eucalyptus trees had gone yellow, and the hills beyond them were the color of smoke, and the road curved gently through the valley like something that had been drawn rather than built. She was 36 years old, and had not cried in 4 years. She was aware of this the way a person is aware of a healed fracture, not constantly, only when the weather changed. The meeting was in 90 minutes. The Harrington Group contract was worth $42 million over 3 years, and Elena had spent 8 weeks structuring it. She had not slept more than 5 hours the previous night. She was wearing a charcoal blazer over a white silk blouse, and she had rehearsed the final 3 minutes of her closing statement in the shower that morning until the hot water ran out. The engine stuttered first. A small thing, a hiccup of hesitation between second and third gear that she almost attributed to the road itself. Then the tachometer dropped. Then the dashboard lit up in red like a face full of bad news. And the Ferrari rolled to a stop on the gravel shoulder, as if it had simply decided it was done. Elena sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel. She called her assistant, Diane. Diane said she would send someone from the dealership, but the nearest authorized Ferrari service center was 37 miles away, and traffic was backed up on 101, and realistically it would be 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. Move the meeting, Elena said. The Harrington representative is already at the hotel. He flew in from Boston. Then push it to 7. Buy him dinner. Use the corporate card. She hung up and got out of the car. The air was cold and smelled of dry grass, and something distantly automotive oil, perhaps, or warm metal cooling. The valley spread out below the road in shades of ochre and gray. There were no other cars. There was, in the distance, what appeared to be a garage, a low white building set back from the road with a hand-painted sign she couldn't read from here. She was looking at her phone, calculating, when she heard the crunch of gravel and looked up. The man was walking toward her from a truck parked 50 yards back, an older Ford F-150, dark green, with a rusted passenger side door that had been repainted a slightly different shade. He was perhaps 40, lean, with the kind of face that had been weathered rather than aged. He wore a canvas work jacket over a dark sweater, and his hands were already reaching for the pockets as he walked. The unconscious gesture of someone who carries tools and knows where everything is. Beside him, a girl of about 8, dark-haired, wearing a yellow coat that was too big for her, held his hand with both of hers and took 2 steps for every one of his. "Car trouble?" he said. Not the way people say it when they're making conversation. The way a doctor might say, "Does it hurt here?" A direct, diagnostic question. "It's being handled," Elena said. He looked at the Ferrari. Then at her. Then back at the Ferrari. And something happened in his expression that she couldn't immediately name, a kind of careful attention. Like recognition. "Ferrari 458, he said. 2011 or 2012. Launsenling Isherar. Italia or Spider. Italia." She paused, despite herself. "How can you tell from here?" "Stance," he said. "Spider sits a little higher at the rear. Also the color. This specific red, it's not in the standard palette. Someone special ordered it." Elena said nothing. "I'm Marcus," he said. "This is Lily." He looked down at the girl, who looked up at Elena with the frank, unhurried curiosity of a child who has not yet learned that staring is impolite. "We were heading back from the feed store. I've got some tools in the truck. The dealership is sending someone." "How long?" She didn't answer. "An hour and a half," he said. It wasn't a guess. He'd heard the call, or heard enough of it, or simply understood that if she were willing to stand in the cold next to a dead car, she would have already solved the problem. "I'll take a look. It's up to you." Lily had released his hand and crouched down to look at a crack in the asphalt where something, a weed, improbably was growing. She did not appear to be paying attention to the conversation, but when Elena glanced at her, she looked up and said, very seriously, "Osua se ret gyoi." Then, with the practiced ease of a child who moves between worlds. "He's really good at cars." Elena looked at the man. "Fine," she said. "But don't touch anything you're not sure about." He didn't respond to the qualifier. He walked back to the truck and returned with a canvas bag that looked like it had been in continuous use for 20 years. He set it on the gravel, crouched beside the driver's door, and said, "Can you pop the hood?" She did. What happened next was not what she expected. She had seen mechanics work before the hurried confidence of dealership technicians with their laptops and their diagnostic ports. The efficient boredom of men who did the same job 40 times a week. Marcus did none of that. He stood at the front of the open engine bay and looked. Just looked. For almost a full minute, without moving, without touching anything, with an expression of complete stillness. Then he placed one hand flat on the intake manifold and closed his eyes. Lily had found a piece of chalk from somewhere. Elena had no idea where, and was drawing on the flat face of a nearby concrete barrier. A horse, it appeared to be. Or possibly a large dog. "The fuel pressure regulator," Marcus said. Eyes still closed. "But that's not the root problem. There's vapor lock in the return line. Someone changed the fuel filter within the last 6 months and didn't purge the line properly afterward." Elena said, "The dealership serviced it in August. That explains it." He opened his eyes and looked at her. "This is a 2-hour fix. Maybe less. If the fittings cooperate. And if they don't, then 2.5. He worked without narrating. That was the first thing she noticed. Watching from a careful distance, he did not explain what he was doing, or ask for her approval between steps. He worked the way people work when they have done something so many times that the process has become internal. A conversation between themselves and the object, rather than a performance for an audience. His tools were old, not vintage, just used. A set of combination wrenches, with the chrome worn from the handles. Pliers that had been repaired at the joint, with a welded bead of metal. A flashlight with the rubber grip partially peeled away. Everything organized in the canvas bag, with a precision that suggested long habit. Lily finished her drawing, and came to stand near Elena. Not beside her exactly, but in her general vicinity. She looked up at Elena with those clear, assessing eyes. "Do you own that car?" she asked. "Yes. It's very red." "It is. My dad says red cars are either for people who love cars, or for people who want to look like they love cars." She considered this. "Which one are you?" Elena looked at the car. In the late afternoon light, the red had deepened to something almost burgundy, and the lines of the body were doing that thing they did sometimes in the right conditions, looking less like a manufactured object and more like something alive. "I inherited it," she said, and was surprised to hear herself say it. Lily nodded, as if this were a complete answer. At 6:19, 1 hour and 32 minutes after Marcus had first opened the hood, the engine turned over. The sound was immediate and full. A deep mechanical thrum that Elena had heard 10,000 times, and yet which, in this moment, on this road, in the cold, sounded different. More present, more earnest. Marcus closed the hood. He wiped his hands on a gray rag from his back pocket. "It'll drive normally now," he said. "Better than before, actually. There was some carbon buildup I cleared out while I had access." Elena opened her purse. "How much?" she said. Marcus shook his head. "I don't," she started. "It's not a professional job," he said. "I'm not insured for roadside. It's just one person helping another person." He said it without weight, without magnanimity, as if it were simply a description of facts. "That's..." She stopped. She had been about to say ridiculous. She didn't say it. "I don't accept charity." Something moved across his face, not quite a smile. More like the recognition of a familiar argument. "It's not charity. Charity implies sacrifice. This cost me an hour and a half of driving back from the feed store. I would have been home by 6 either way." Lily tugged his sleeve. "Can we go? I'm hungry." "We can go," he said. Elena watched them walk back to the green truck. Lily climbed in on the driver's side and crawled across to the passenger seat. Marcus started the engine. It needed a moment. The Ford. A brief hesitation before it caught and pulled back onto Route 2 heading north. Elena stood beside the Ferrari. The meeting, she realized, was in 38 minutes. She got in and drove south. She made the meeting. Barely. She arrived at the hotel 9 minutes before 7, with her jacket still on, and her hair disheveled from the wind. And Thomas Harrington, early 50s, Dartmouth, the kind of deliberate handshake that announces itself, looked at her with the particular expression of a man who is deciding whether to be offended. She sat down and closed the contract in 41 minutes. Afterward, in her car, she should have felt the thing she usually felt. The clean, cool satisfaction of a completed task. Like a door clicking shut, she felt instead something mildly unfamiliar, a kind of residue she couldn't identify. She drove home on the freeway this time. She did not take Route 2. In her garage, a 3-car space beneath her house in Brentwood, climate-controlled, with lighting she'd installed specifically for looking at the Ferrari, she parked and sat and looked at the car through the windshield of her Range Rover for a longer time than she intended. The Ferrari had belonged to her father. His name had been Robert Hartwell, and he had been a mechanical engineer of the obsessive, particular variety, the kind of man who built things with his hands, not because he lacked the money to pay others, but because he could not trust anyone else to understand what he was building. He had worked for 3 years at Apex Dynamics, a small but well-funded advanced engineering firm in Pasadena, before leaving under circumstances that Elena had never fully understood. She had been 16 when he left. Not left the firm, left. Drove to work one morning in October, parked his car, and never came home. The police had found no evidence of foul play. His accounts had not been touched. His passport had not been used. He had simply a word Elena had come to resent vanished. The Ferrari had been left in the garage. She had driven it for the first time at 19. After getting her license, and her mother had cried watching her pull out of the driveway. Not from sentiment, but from fear, because the car was worth more than their house at that point. Elena had sold the house 3 years later to pay for her MBA and her mother's care home, but she had kept the Ferrari. She had never been entirely sure why. Now she got out of the Range Rover and walked around the Ferrari in her heels, slowly, as if looking for something she'd dropped. The engine ran smoother now. She had noticed it on the drive home, a responsiveness she had not been aware of missing until it was restored, as if the car had been speaking with a slight impediment and had only just been understood. Someone changed the fuel filter within the last 6 months and didn't purge the line properly. The dealership in August. She had authorized a standard service oil, filters, brakes, the usual. She had not asked about purging fuel lines. She had not known to ask. Marcus had known from 15 feet away. She went inside and opened her laptop and typed Ferrari 458 Italia fuel vapor lock return line into a search engine, and spent an hour reading. What she found confirmed everything he had said, with a precision that suggested he had not guessed, but known not estimated, diagnosed. She read 3 more articles about the 458's fuel system and understood, by the end of them, that she had been looking at an engine for 12 years without seeing it. She called her assistant at 9:30. "Diane," she said, "I need you to find someone for me." She drove the Ferrari for 5 days before she did anything about it. She took it to work twice. She drove up into the hills on a Saturday morning. The long curves above Mulholland. The kind of road the car was built for, and she felt the difference clearly enough that she stopped once to sit with it pulled over at a scenic overlook, with the engine idling, listening. She had owned this car for 17 years, and she had never described it as listening back. She was describing it that way now, internally, without meaning to. A colleague, Dennis, who worked in her building and drove a vintage Porsche 911, saw the Ferrari in the parking structure and made his usual appreciative noises, and then stopped. "Did you tune it?" he said. "Service in August." "No. That's not. It sounds different." He walked around the front. Lower. More even. Like someone corrected the balance. He frowned. "Who did the work?" "A man I met on Route 2. Dennis looked at her. You let a roadside guy work on your Ferrari. He fixed it in an hour and a half without diagnostic software. Dennis was quiet for a moment. What's his name? Marcus. She paused. I'm looking into it. Diane had found him by then, not easily. There was no shop listing under his name. No professional directory entry. What she found was a business registration from 4 years earlier. Whitfield Restoration. Sole proprietor, Marcus T. Whitfield, registered at an address in Reseda. There was a single review on a home improvement platform, from 18 months ago, that said only, he fixed something 3 other mechanics said was unfixable. I won't say more because I don't want anyone else to know about him. That review had been written by a man named Gerald Foss, and when Elena's investigator called him, Gerald Foss laughed and said he'd been waiting for someone to ask. He fixed a 1967 Lamborghini Miura that 2 Italian specialists had given up on, Foss said. Took him 4 days. Charged me $400. 400, Elena repeated. He argued about whether to charge me at all. His daughter was with him the whole time. She was doing homework on a folding table in the corner. Elena drove to Reseda on a Tuesday morning. The address was a residential street with a mix of small houses and 2-car garages. Marcus's property was unremarkable from the outside, a pale yellow house with a large detached garage at the end of a concrete driveway. The garage door was up. Inside, she could see 2 vehicles, a partially disassembled BMW from the early 80s and something older, possibly a Triumph, that she couldn't fully identify. She parked the Ferrari on the street. Lily saw her first. The girl was sitting on the front step with a library book open on her knees. And when Elena walked up the driveway, she looked up and said, "You came back. Is your father here?" "In the garage." She dog-eared her page. "He said you might come." Elena stopped. "He said that?" "He said, someone might come about the car. I figured it was you because you were the only person he helped recently." She stood up and looked at Elena with frank assessment. "You're wearing different shoes than before. These are better for walking." Elena looked down at her flats, then at Lily. "Will you take me to him?" she said. Lily led her into the garage. Marcus was under the BMW, on a rolling board, visible only from the waist down. The garage was clean in the way a working space is clean, organized rather than sterile. Everything in a defined place, the floor swept, though not mopped, the smell of penetrating oil and dry metal. "Miss Hartwell," he said, without emerging. "How did you know my name?" "Ferrari Italia, in that specific custom red," he said. "I had some time to look into it. Previous registered owner was Robert Hartwell, deceased or presumed. You're his daughter." He rolled out from under the BMW and stood up. He was wiping his hands on the same gray rag as before. "I need you to look at the car again," Elena said. "Why?" She hadn't expected the direct question. She had expected the acquiescence of a service professional. The reflexive, of course, what seems to be the problem. She found herself saying the true thing, which surprised her. "Because you saw something in it that I didn't." Marcus looked at her steadily. Lily, in the doorway, said, "Bo." He looked at his daughter. "All right," he said. "Drive it in." He worked differently this time. More slowly, more deliberately. With the manner of someone who is not so much repairing a thing as reading one, Elena stood to the side and watched. She had brought coffee 2 cups from the place 3 blocks over that she'd spotted on the drive-in, and she placed one on the workbench near him without comment. He didn't acknowledge it for 20 minutes and then drank it without looking up. Lily sat at a folding table in the corner working through what appeared to be a math worksheet with the focused indifference of a child who has made peace with homework. "The frame welds," Marcus said, half to himself. Here and here he indicated 2 points near the firewall. "These aren't factory." Someone added reinforcement. "Custom work, good quality." Whoever did it knew what they were doing. Could it have been a repair? Elena asked. Not a repair. There was no corresponding damage. These were additions. He moved to the interior and removed the lower dashboard panel with practiced efficiency. And in here, he stopped. Elena moved closer. In the space behind the removed panel, where there should have been only the standard tangle of wiring harnesses and climate control cables, There was something additional, a small assembly mounted to the firewall, perhaps 8 inches square, made of what appeared to be brushed aluminum. It was neatly integrated, not jammed in, not taped, but properly bracketed, as if it had been installed during original assembly. "That's not stock," Elena said. "No. What is it?" Marcus reached in and traced the edges without touching the device itself. "I don't know yet," he said. "But it was installed by someone who understood this car's architecture well enough to integrate it invisibly. This isn't amateur work. Whoever did this spent time with engineering drawings." Elena sat down on a work stool that Lily had silently placed behind her at some point. "The car was my father's," she said. "I know. He was a mechanical engineer. He worked at Apex Dynamics in Pasadena. He disappeared when I was 16 in 2004. Marcus didn't respond immediately. He was still looking at the assembly. "Did he work on this car himself?" he asked. "I don't know. He always serviced it at the dealership." But she stopped. "He used to say things about it. When I was a child, he called it the Keeper. I thought it was just a name, something he said because he liked it." Marcus finally looked at her. "I need to open this," he said. "It's not a simple bracket removal. There's a mechanism, a locking system. If I force it, I could damage what's inside." "What do you think is inside?" "Something your father wanted to protect," he said. "And something he wanted someone to eventually find. He spent 3 days studying the mechanism before he touched it." Elena knew this because she came back both subsequent days, which she had not planned. She had meetings rescheduled, and a quarterly review to prepare for, and a call with her legal team about a subsidiary restructuring. And she came back anyway, for reasons she did not fully examine, parking the Range Rover down the street and walking up the driveway past Lily's rotation of outdoor activities, reading, drawing, a brief and serious phase with a jump rope, and into the garage where Marcus was measuring, photographing, sketching on graph paper with a mechanical pencil. He spoke to her differently now. Less formally, more directly, as if some social calculation had been silently completed and set aside. He explained what he was doing without being asked. He asked questions about her father, about the timeline of the car's history, about what she knew of the work Robert Hartwell had done at Apex Dynamics. She told him more than she'd told anyone in years. Apex Dynamics worked on advanced drivetrain systems, she said. On the second day, sitting on her usual stool with a coffee that Lily had made improbably competent at this, for an 8-year-old. "My father's specialty was what he called embedded mechanical logic. Ways of integrating information, carrying structures into physical systems." He said. She paused. "He said that a good machine should be able to tell its own story, if you knew how to read it." Marcus put down his pencil. "Embedded mechanical logic," he said, as if tasting the phrase. "I didn't understand what it meant when I was a child. I think I do," he said. "And I think I know what's in this car." On the morning of the 4th day, he called her at 7:15 and said, "Come this morning. Bring coffee." She was there by 8. He opened it without tools. That was the thing she would remember afterward. Not the contents, not the revelation, but the manner of the opening. He had spent 3 days understanding the locking mechanism, and in the end he opened it with 2 fingers and a quarter-turn rotation, the way a safe opens when you finally know the combination. No force, no drama, just understanding applied. The compartment was small, perhaps 6 inches by 4, recessed into the assembly. Inside, cushioned in a material that looked like high-density foam, cut to exact dimensions, was a flat piece of brushed steel, approximately 4 inches by 3, perhaps 2 millimeters thick. Marcus lifted it carefully and held it under the work light. Elena stood beside him. On one side of the steel piece, etched with what appeared to be a jeweler's tool, fine, precise, clearly done by hand, was a grid of symbols, technical notation, tolerances, material specifications, what appeared to be a 3-part reference number. The work was meticulous. Whoever had done it had taken their time. On the other side, in the bottom right corner, 3 words and a date. ERH, der 14. November 2003. Robert Hartwell, November and Part Bless, 2003. 11 months before he disappeared. Elena was not aware of sitting down. She was aware, in a distant way, that she was sitting on the concrete floor of Marcus's garage, and that Marcus had not said anything, and that somewhere outside Lily was singing to herself a fragment of something tuneless and inventive, the way children sing when they think no one is listening. She held the piece of steel in both hands. The etching caught the light in small, bright lines. Her father had been here. Not here, in this garage, but here, in this moment. In the intention of it, the deliberate creation of a hidden record, the trust that someone would eventually have the patience and the knowledge to find it. It doesn't just store what happened, she thought, and recognized the thought as her father's. It stores who we were when we made it. Marcus crouched down to her level, not beside her, in front of her, where she could see his face. "Are you all right?" he asked. She looked at him. "He made this," she said. "Yes. He put it there. Yes. And then he..." She stopped. She was not going to cry. She had not cried in 4 years, and she was not going to cry on the floor of a garage in Reseda in November. He disappeared 10 months later. "I know," Marcus said. She looked back at the steel piece. The reference numbers in the grid, she recognized the format now, partly, not from her own work, but from documents she'd seen years ago, when she'd gone through her father's files after the estate was settled. The numbering convention was Apex Dynamics's internal system. "This is from his work," she said. "This is documentation from his work at Apex." "I think so too. He hid it in the car, because..." She paused. "Because the car would be safe. Because I would keep the car." A long pause. "He knew I would keep it." Marcus said nothing. He let the silence do what silence was for. She scanned the steel piece. She hired a technical translator, someone who worked in patent forensics and knew Apex Dynamics's internal notation system from 2 litigation cases in the mid-2000s. His name was Bertrand Sloan. He charged $300 an hour, and he called her at 10:30 on a Thursday morning. "This is a materials specification and test protocol for something called Project Meridian," Sloan said. "Filed internally in November 2003. It describes a novel composite material, something to do with thermal stress distribution in high-performance drivetrain components. The engineering here is a pause. Well, it's unusually elegant. Whoever designed this understood materials science at a level that most industrial engineers don't." "What happened to Project Meridian?" Elena asked. "As far as public record goes," Sloan said, "it doesn't exist. I've done patent searches and I can't find a filing. The techniques described in this notation, or techniques that appear substantially similar, show up in 3 Apex Dynamics patents filed between 2006 and 2008, but there's no attribution to Robert Hartwell. And no record of him as a co-inventor." Elena sat with her phone in her hand for a long time after she hung up. She thought about what she knew about Apex Dynamics. She had not thought about them carefully. In years they existed in the background of her father's disappearance, like a piece of furniture, permanent and unremarkable. She had always assumed his departure from the firm 2 years before his disappearance had been voluntary, or at worst, contentious in the ordinary way. Such things were disagreements about credit, compensation, direction. She now thought it might have been something else. She called Marcus. "I need you to look at something else," she said. "Not in the car. In some documents." "I'm a mechanic," he said. "You're something else," she said, "and you know it." A pause. "Come at 3, he said. "Lily's at school until 4. She brought the Apex Dynamics files. She had kept them in a storage unit in Culver City for 11 years. 3 boxes of paper and 4 hard drives she'd never been able to bring herself to look at comprehensively. She'd had them digitized 2 years ago by a document service, and the scanned files sat in a folder on her company server that she had opened twice. She opened them now, with Marcus at the folding table in the garage, while the Triumph project sat half-assembled in the corner, and the late afternoon light came in at low angles through the garage door. Marcus was not a financial analyst. He had no background in corporate documents or patent litigation, but he had, Elena came to understand, over the course of 3 hours, an unusually structured way of thinking, the habit of a man who diagnosed complex systems by understanding how their components related to each other. He saw patterns in the documents, the way he'd heard patterns in her engine. "Look at this," he said, at one point, sliding a page toward her. "The dates on these project status reports your father signed off on Phase 2 of Meridian in September 2003. Then in December 2003, a different project code appears in the budget allocation MRX, not Meridian. Your father's name is not on any MRX document." "MRX," Elena said. The patents filed in 2006 have the MRX designation in their internal reference codes," Marcus said. "Which means someone renamed the project after your father left. Or was removed." She looked at the signature on the Phase 2 report. Her father's handwriting, compact and careful, the R and H of his initials forming a shape she had seen on birthday cards and grocery lists, and she now understood on a small piece of steel hidden in a Ferrari engine. He had known something was wrong. He had known before he disappeared. He had hidden the original specifications, the proof of authorship in the car he knew would be kept. The man who had ultimately benefited from Project Meridian's derivative patents, who had been at Apex Dynamics during the relevant period and had risen steadily in the years following, was named Carlton Webb. He was now the chief financial officer of Prism Technologies, a publicly traded company that had licensed substantial elements of its thermal materials technology from Apex Dynamics. Prism Technologies was, Elena noted with a slow, cold recognition, one of the subsidiaries in a portfolio company that had recently been in acquisition talks with her own firm. She had been scheduled to meet with Prism's CFO in 6 weeks. With Carlton Webb, she sat back in her chair. "This is not a coincidence," she said. "No," Marcus agreed. "He's been near my firm before. 2 years ago, there was a consulting engagement." She stopped. "He would have had access to information about my position, about what I owned. He might have known about the car," Marcus said. "He might have been looking for it." Elena thought about the past 2 years. The acquisition inquiry that had come through an unusual channel. The consulting firm that had shown particular interest in her personal holdings as part of due diligence. The service appointment in August standard dealership service. She'd booked it through a concierge program she subscribed to. She called Diane at 8:30 that night. "The August service," she said. "The concierge booking. Who made the appointment?" Diane was quiet for a moment. "The appointment came through the Platinum Care platform. You authorized it in July." "I know I authorized it. Who scheduled it? What's the name on the service order?" A longer pause. "Typing. The service advisor was listed as Regis Automotive Group. But the scheduling contact, the person who coordinated the pickup and drop-off." A pause. "The name on file is Carlton Webb." Elena stood in her kitchen, very still. Her father's car had been in Carlton Webb's orbit in August. Someone had serviced it, had looked inside, had perhaps found nothing because the compartment was, as Marcus had demonstrated, extraordinarily well concealed, but someone had tried. She did not go to the police first. She went to Bertrand Sloan, the patent forensics expert, and she asked him what was needed to prove prior inventorship in a disputed patent claim filed 20 years ago. "Contemporaneous documentation with original signatures," he said. "Technical specifications in the inventor's own notation, dated before the patent filing. Ideally, something that can be forensically dated material analysis on the substrate." "I have a metal plate," Elena said. "Steel, hand-etched. Dated November 2003. Sloan was quiet for a moment. "Engraving can be forensically dated within a few years," he said. "Steel composition can be traced to manufacturing batches. If the plate is genuine, it is, then you have something," he said. "Depending on what the specifications describe, you could have the basis for a patent invalidity claim, which in turn, if the patents were licensed for commercial use, becomes a significant financial matter." "How significant?" He named a number. Elena called Marcus. "I need one more thing from you," she said. "What?" I need you to testify. About what you found. About how you found it. And where it was. And what condition it was in. I need a technical witness who can explain to a court or to a board what those specifications mean and how they relate to what's in the car. A pause. I'm a mechanic, he said. You keep saying that, Elena said. And it keeps being true the way a partial truth is true. What else are you? A longer pause. I went to Caltech, he said. Mechanical engineering. Class of 2005. I left before my dissertation. He paused. My wife was ill. I came back to California. I needed work I could do near home, with flexible hours, Elena said. And when she died, the silence on the line was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of a fact that had been absorbed rather than avoided. By then, he said, I'd been doing this for 3 years, and I was good at it. And Lily was 4. He paused. I didn't go back. Will you testify? Another pause. Tell me the date of the meeting, he said. She told him. Lily's winter break starts the week before, he said. I'll need to find someone to watch her. I know someone, Elena said, which surprised her as she said it. My assistant Diane has a daughter Lily's age. They can stay at my house. There's a pool. A very long pause. All right, he said. The meeting with Prism Technologies board was 3 weeks later. Elena had used the intervening time well. Sloan had produced a 40-page technical analysis. Her legal team had filed a preliminary challenge to 2 of the 3 Apex-derived patents. The forensic dating of the steel plate had come back with a probability range of 1,999, 2007, consistent with the November 2003 date, with the steel composition matching a batch produced by a California mill that had ceased operations in 2006. Carlton Webb arrived at the meeting with his own lawyers, which told Elena he had known something was coming. He was a compact man in his late 50s, with the particular stillness of someone who has been careful for a long time, and when he looked at Elena across the conference table, his expression was measured in the way expensive things are measured by weight rather than volume. Marcus sat to Elena's right. He was wearing a dark jacket over a clean shirt, his hands flat on the table, and he looked precisely as calm as he looked when he was listening to an engine. He was going to be fine. Elena opened the folder. My father, she said, was Robert Hartwell. He was the primary architect of the thermal materials process you've been licensing under the Apex patents for the past 17 years. He documented his original specifications in November 2003 and concealed them in a vehicle he knew would be preserved. We have the documentation, we have forensic dating, and we have a technical witness who can explain every element of the comparison between my father's specifications and your licensed material. She slid 3 pages across the table. I'm not here to litigate, she said. I'm here to correct the record. My father's name will be restored as co-inventor on the relevant patents, with appropriate compensation structured from the commercial licensing revenue to date. Alternatively, we proceed with the invalidity challenge, which will trigger the licensing review provisions in your agreements with 6 downstream companies, which I believe your legal team understands would be a considerably more disruptive process. Webb looked at the pages. He looked at Marcus. He looked at Elena. He did not say anything for a long time. Then he said, "Who was driving when the car broke down?" Elena did not understand the question. "On Route 2, he said. 3 weeks ago. We had a team monitoring the vehicle. We saw it stop. We saw the mechanic." He looked at Marcus. "We didn't know who you were. Just a man on the road," Marcus said. Webb looked back at Elena. His expression was the expression of someone calculating a very large number. "I'll need to speak with my legal team," he said. "You have until Thursday," Elena said. They settled on Wednesday. The terms were specific. Robert Hartwell's name would be added to the 3 patents as co-inventor, contingent on no disclosure of Apex's original role in the suppression of his authorship. A condition Elena's lawyers negotiated down to a brief and carefully worded public statement, acknowledging previously overlooked attribution A financial settlement was structured. Elena's firm received it in trust for a foundation she established in her father's name, directed toward engineering education programs at underfunded schools in the Los Angeles area. She drove to Reseda on a Thursday afternoon in early December. The garage door was up. Marcus was working on the Triumph. It was further along now, the engine reassembled, the frame straightened and primed. He didn't hear her pull up. He was under the car. Lily was on the front step with a different library book. She had gone through approximately one per week since Elena had started coming here. Elena had noticed. She was currently working through a collection of short stories that looked significantly above grade level. "He's under the Triumph," Lily said, without looking up. "I see that." Elena sat on the step beside her. "What are you reading?" Lily held up the cover. "Oh, Henry, Complete Stories." "He's good," Elena said. "The endings are funny," Lily said. "Not, haha, funny. More like the other kind. Ironic." "Yeah." She turned a page. "Are you going to give my dad a lot of money?" Elena considered this. "I'm going to try," she said. "He'll say no." "I know. He always says no. Mr. Foss tried to pay him extra, and he said no." She looked up. "He says the job is the payment." "I know he says that. Do you understand it?" Lily asked, with the genuine curiosity of someone for whom understanding was more interesting than agreement. Elena was quiet for a moment. "I'm starting to," she said. Marcus rolled out from under the Triumph. He saw Elena and stood up without apparent surprise. He accepted the coffee she'd brought with both hands and drank it. "It's done?" he said. "It's done." She handed him the folder. "Settlement documents. Your name is included technical consultant. There's a fee attached." He opened the folder. He looked at the number. He closed the folder. "No," he said. "Marcus, I found something in a car," he said. "That's what I do. I don't..." He paused. "I don't accept payment for being in the right place." "It's not payment for being in the right place," Elena said. "It's payment for 3 years ago and 7 years ago. And every car you fixed for $400 when it should have been $4,000. She stopped. She tried a different approach. "My father hid that documentation because he thought someone who understood it would eventually find it. You found it. You're owed something." "I have what I need," Marcus said. "Lily needs things," Elena said. Marcus looked at his daughter. "She does," he agreed, "but not." "There's a good school in Pasadena," Elena said. "A science and engineering program. They have a partial scholarship fund for students who qualify. Lily would qualify. The foundation I'm establishing will be a donor." She paused. "That's separate from what's in the folder. That's already done." Marcus looked at her. Something moved in his expression, not the resistance she had expected, but something more complicated, a kind of reckoning. "You didn't ask me," he said. "No," she agreed. "I didn't." A long silence. "Thank you," he said. The words were plain and unembellished, which made them exact. She nodded. Lily sat in the Ferrari that afternoon for approximately 45 minutes. She had asked first very correctly, with the particular formality of a child who has been taught that other people's things are other people's things, and Elena had opened the passenger door, and she had climbed in and sat with her hands in her lap looking at the dashboard with an expression of complete absorption. Elena and Marcus stood in the garage doorway. "She's interested in engines," Marcus said. "I noticed. She's been reading my old Caltech textbooks. The undergraduate ones." He paused. "She's 8. She's going to be remarkable," Elena said. Marcus said nothing, which was the particular agreement of a parent who believes the thing but has learned not to say it too often. Because to say it is to tempt the universe. The afternoon light had gone flat and pale. The winter light of a December day in Southern California that is not cold enough to be dramatic, but carries a certain gravity, a certain leaning toward dusk. The Ferrari sat in the middle of the concrete floor, its red deep and steady in that light. Elena looked at it. She thought about her father's hands, the shape of them, remembered from childhood, the calluses from the work he did on weekends in the garage of their house in Altadena, the patience with which he'd explained things, The way he'd said the car has memory, and the way she had not understood what he meant until now, until this moment, standing in a stranger's garage that was no longer entirely a stranger's. The car had kept it. 20 years, 3 owners mechanics. A dealership in August that had looked and not seen, and the car had kept it. Because he had built the keeping into the car, because he had trusted not in luck, not in circumstance, but in the eventual arrival of the right kind of attention. What will you do with it? Marcus asked. The car. She had thought about this. Keep it, she said. Drive it. Good. But I want to understand it now, she said. Really understand it. The way you do. She paused. Will you teach me? He looked at her sideways, not quite a smile, closer to the expression he'd had the first time she'd offered him money. The expression of someone deciding whether to take a thing seriously. That's a long project, he said. I have time, she said. Lily climbed out of the Ferrari and stood beside it with her hands on the roof, looking in through the windshield at the dashboard. She said something to the car. Elena couldn't hear it, some private remark, and then patted the roof once and walked back toward them. It's very clean inside, she said to Elena, which was clearly the highest praise she could offer. Like someone took care of it. Someone did, Elena said. For a long time, Lily looked at the car once more, then at Elena, then at her father, with the synthesizing gaze of a child who is placing things in relation to each other. Okay, she said, which settled it, in the way that children's pronouncements sometimes settle things not through authority but through simplicity. Marcus went back to the Triumph. Elena sat on the workstool she had come to think of as hers and watched him work. Outside, the December light continued its slow recession. The valley beyond the garage door went from pale gold to gray to a particular deep blue that was not quite dark and not quite light, the color of a moment just before resolution, before the last variable in a long equation finally comes clear. The engine of the Triumph fired for the first time at 6:14. Not perfectly, it coughed once and roughened, the idle hunting, but it fired. Marcus stood and listened with his hand flat on the vibrating metal, eyes closed, the posture she now recognized. He nodded once, a private confirmation. The engine settled. Elena drove home on Route 2.